Mark, welcome to Halloween Daily. Thanks so much for hanging out with us today.
Thanks, Matt. Thanks for having me.
Well, I am excited to talk to you about a number of the films you've worked on. I was studying your IMDb and just trying to pick out a couple highlights, but there's so many to choose from, so many just epic landmark films and a lot of my personal favorites in there. So I've got a list of a few to try to hit on tonight and get some highlights and just some memories and experiences and but before we even get into that, in our email correspondence leading up to this, I was super thrilled, of course, to learn that all of this kind of started for you with Halloween as a kid, and you're not the first one to tell us this. We've seen this correlation quite a bit, and a lot of people in different industries talk about how their creativity that led them to ultimately their life's work kind of started with Halloween. So let's start your origin there if we can, and flash all the way back to your earliest memory of Halloween and how that just celebration of the holiday would start lighting that spark of what would become your life's work.
Well, as a child of the 70s, I grew up watching things like The $6 Million Man, The Incredible Hulk, and my grandmother introduced me to the Universal monster movies. I mean, some of my earliest memories are watching Dracula, Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein, and asking her about what are these things I'm seeing, and she explained they were actors and makeup. I don't know that my little brain put it together, but I was always drawn to the macabre. I was always fascinated by it. I was scared of it. I mean, I remember, being a little kid and Dracula was on, and even though I knew where it was going, it's the part where he goes, "I never drink wine," and Dwight Fry cuts himself, and Bela Lugosi, goes in slowly. I was so terrified. I was too scared to go up to the TV and change the channel because this was before remote controls, but I still didn't want to look away. So there's always been a fascination with that. And as a kid in school, I can remember all I wanted to do was draw monsters. All I wanted to do was like out of Play-Doh make my monsters. And a lot of the other kids are like, "You're weird, dude." Except around Halloween. When Halloween happened, I'm suddenly the popular kid. Everybody wants me to draw their monsters with them. Everybody wants me to
Yeah.
do this with them. So that when Halloween came around, it felt like I'm home. It literally felt like, okay, the world has caught up to me. Now I'm where I belong. And that's really the best way I think I can articulate it.
That's a beautiful way to articulate it. Um,
Thank you.
I love that, and yes, Halloween is definitely feels like home for us as well. And so you, like you said, the world would kind of catch up with where you were year
Hmm.
round. You were kind of already Halloween is every day. Even
Every day.
at that point, as a kid, you were already living the Halloween daily lifestyle that we always talk about because it shouldn't be just one day. We can
It
do it up
wasn't for me.
special that day, but yeah, it's every day. Um, and so you must have some fond memories of applying makeup to yourself and the
Yeah,
beginnings of that. Can you talk a little bit about some of those early
sure.
memories
I
of
mean,
early costumes that you might have attempted?
oh, again, when I said when most kids were like chasing girls or doing sports, I was in my basement, like, gluing shit to my face, trying to make myself look like Frankenstein. There was a little book I had. I don't know where it came from, but it's a little scholastic book, and it's called Movie Monsters by Alan Ormsby. And in that book, it showed pictures of monsters. And at the end, he gave little instructionals on how to do makeup. And one of them was like a brown bag Frankenstein, where you put like a brown bag over your head, you cut out the face, and you paint it and you make yourself look like Frankenstein. That was one of my earliest makeups, was trying to make that look as good as it did in the drawings in the book, which it never did. I always wanted to do a werewolf transformation. And when I was about 10, American Werewolf in London came out on in the theater, so my parents refused to take me to go see it. It was rated R, probably a good idea. But when it came out on video and we got our first VHS recorder, that was the first video I got. And watching that movie again, I'm like, gluing hair to my face as I'm watching it and trying to figure out how they did that stuff.
Yeah.
A real turning point happened to me actually my sophomore year of high school. I lived in Danbury, Connecticut. And my aunt lived in the Poughkeepsie area in Dutchess County. And she contacted me and said, there's a guy here locally who does a haunted mansion every year. It's Kevin McCurdy's Haunted Mansion. And this was around 1984, 85. And they were doing like their 15th year, I think, of him doing this stuff. So I remember she said she's going to come pick me up, and I'm in study hall. I'm drawing all my monsters, and I can't wait for this. And then she takes me to Kevin's house, and again, I'm not. It had to be like towards the end of summer and beginning of fall, but like Kevin, like all of us, Halloween's year round for him. Uh, and that was a very pivotal moment because for the first time, I was around other people that knew who had a love for this stuff and knew who like Tom Savini, Rick Baker, Dick Smith were. Whereas, when I was in school, nobody knew who they were. Like nobody had an interest in this stuff the way I did. But when I met Kevin in the Haunted, and he's still doing it. He just had his 49th year. He's going to have his 50th year next year, which I'm going to fly in for and do some makeup and talk to people and stuff. So
That's
it's
amazing.
Kevin McCurdy's Haunted Mansion, thehauntedmansion.com, I think is his domain. But that was, and Kevin really took me under his wing. He taught me some sculpting, and then there was a makeup artist named Don Deesh. When I remember my first day at the mansion, I was like so nervous, and I had my little makeup kit, and and we're in the room, and I'm watching people get made up, and I'm so excited but so terrified. And Don finally took me, sat me down, put a grease paint stick in my hand, sat a girl in front of me and said, "Here, like start, will you?" And that was really what I needed to kind of start doing makeup. And really I've been doing makeup ever since. It was really that moment for the Haunted Mansion.
Wow. Wow. And so you were a teenager then, you were in high school, like you said, and you had always had this affinity for the macabre, like you said, and then this haunted house opportunity comes, and that just
Oh,
opened up. It sounds like that opened up the valve of creativity there. That
100%,
that first.
100%. Kevin did, he would do things for theaters. I remember he did a little shop of horrors. I helped build the Audrey 2 plant. It really,
Mm-hmm.
again, even just seeing Kevin's sculpture, I'll never forget he did a sculpture of the creature from the Black Lagoon, and I was just floored. I mean, it was the same clay I used, but this looked phenomenal. Like I was nowhere near the sculptor that Kevin was, and he was just so generous and so forthcoming, kind of taking this weird, nerdy kid under his wing and just giving me an outlet to do this stuff. And he did that with a lot of kids. A lot of theater kids were there. We were kind of like the island of misfit toys, where
Mm-hmm.
we didn't really fit into any like sports clique or anything. But at the Haunted Mansion, we had a home and we had a family, and we all, yeah, went to Rocky Horror Picture Show for the first time with guys. You know what I mean? It's like that kind of stuff, and we all encouraged each other, and it was just a really great environment. And he's still doing it for kids, and I think that's important because we all want to belong somewhere. We all want to find our tribe, for lack of a better word. And the Haunted Mansion was mine for a long time. And when I left for California, I'd been there a few years. They had little brochures every year, and they took a little page in their own Haunted Mansion brochure that said, "Good luck, Mark Viniello. We're proud of you. Have fun in Hollywood."
Oh man, that's awesome. That's
It was
that's
great.
yeah, that is great. And everything you said is so impressive about the fact that, I mean, this haunted house has been going on for coming up on 50 years, you say. I
50
mean,
years.
so
50
starting in the
years.
70s and to be
Mhm.
doing all of this, I mean, now, in 2025, we see these all over the place, but to be, one of the first back then and to keep it going so continuously, um, and yeah, that must have been an eye-opening thing because again, in the mid 80s, like you said, they weren't everywhere. You couldn't
No,
find these indie haunted houses or any of them. I mean, there were some, there were like I remember growing up, like in, I guess it would have been in the late 80s, that certain there were a haunted forest here and there and stuff like that. But yeah, what you're describing, something continuously year after year at
every year.
in
Yeah.
this one group, um, forming this community. That's awesome.
And we're
Now,
still all in touch on Facebook. There's a whole alumni site for Kevin McCurdy's Haunted Mansion. When I was a kid back east, I can remember commercials for two haunted houses. One was the Haunted Mansion in Long Branch, New Jersey. And then there was another one called Brigantine Castle. And that wasn't far from it. I never got to go to them, but I
yeah.
think they were somehow connected, but then they went out of business. And, I don't know. But yeah, you're right. This wasn't something, and nobody did what Kevin did. I mean, he had elaborate things with sound effects and triggers and things that, I mean, it really blew me away doing stuff with like day glow paint. And I mean, and every year he would do it different. So it
Hmm.
wasn't just like you go to the Haunted Mansion. No, he'd have a whole new story. He'd
Wow.
break down walls. He'd make mazes. He would, and the stories. his depth of story, like his storytelling is still, I'm like, Kevin, you got to come right for Hollywood. They need some original
Yeah.
ideas. He's that good. So again, that too was always great. That every year there was something new and a new challenge and a new thing to try. And yeah, he's still doing it, still going strong. Coming up on 50 years of Bowden Park, New York, Wappingers Falls.
Unbelievable. We'll definitely share a link to that site in the description
Oh, please.
of this interview. And yeah, it sounds like he was definitely an innovator in every way in
Yeah.
that industry.
I think
Um,
so. And he's doing escape rooms now too. So he's branched out into that. And I mean, he's just so creative.
yeah.
He's one of those people that is just naturally creative. I had to work very hard for my creativity. I loved it, but
Yeah.
it didn't come naturally for me. And for Kevin, it just seems to, come like breathing, which I've always been impressed with.
Now you mentioned when you left there and headed
Hmm.
out to LA
Hmm.
and they wished you, how long was that from here from when you started and when did you know that, all right, you're gonna go out there and put this talent, try to put it to movies?
I mean, since I was a little kid, it was
It was
really, it seemed,
always.
yeah, I mean, I mean, it's weird because it's something I always wanted to do, but Hollywood for me, it might as well have been another galaxy or another
Hmm.
planet. It seemed so far away and unreachable
Hmm.
that it just never seemed, it was real, but it was something I want to do. I know that sounds like a contradiction. And in college, I remember when I went to a film school. I went to SUNY Purchase, and the first thing I would do anytime I went to a school, or even if we went, in another city, I would go into the bookstores or go into libraries and look up for the books on monster movies and monster makeups. And I went at SUNY Purchase. They had a pretty good selection. They had a book I'd never seen before, and it was like the best and worst day of my life because it was the theater a technique of theater makeups by Vincent J.R. Kehoe, and in the center there was a spread on Rick Baker and how he did American Werewolf in London. And I'd never seen the behind the scenes photos of
Yeah.
this stuff before, and I was transfixed. And I was so excited that I started reading it in my dorm room, and then I got really depressed because he's talking about fiberglass underskulls and smooth on PMC 724 elastomers, and I'm like, I mean, I know it's English, but I don't know what any of this means. And I'm like 18 and I'm like, God, I've been doing this since I was a kid and I was at the Haunted Mansion for years and I was like the makeup artist there. And I'm like, I know nothing. And that really kind of sucked. But I just said, you know what, I got to figure this out. Near my school in Westchester lived a makeup artist named Dick Smith. Dick Smith, for those of you who may not know, is like considered the godfather of makeup. He did The Exorcist, Little Big Man, The Godfather, Taxi Driver, The Hunger, Altered States, like a lot of the things, techniques in artistry that Dick Smith invented in the 70s, we still use today. It's and something he invented in a vacuum in his basement. I got up enough nerve. I called him, and I I got invited to his house, and I got to spend time with him. So that was pretty neat, going to his house and seeing things that he would do. Like for Halloween, he had a, he had a figure of Linda Blair from The Exorcist, and it was a full-size dummy used for the head rotation scene. And he would put it on his porch with a bowl of candy, and he wouldn't make it move or anything. He didn't have to, but like the kids had to come up close enough to the thing to get the candy. So he,
That's
he was
great.
he was a really awesome guy.
That's
So
awesome.
yeah, I got to know Dick Smith, and through him, I became a student of his, and I got a list of makeup effects shops in California. And I decided, I'm gonna drive across country and seek my fame and fortune, see if I can actually make monsters 365 days of the year and
Hmm.
make Halloween a living for me.
Yeah.
And I gotta say I've been really fortunate. I've been really blessed. I feel like I've been allowed to do this stuff, and I still love it. I still get excited about it. I'm still in awe of the people I work with, and just and then when I see a new movie that's coming out, oh, am I gonna get to work on it? Or even if somebody else works on it, I don't
Hmm.
care as long as it's gonna be cool. So I mean, I
Yeah.
just read today that Scarlett Johansson is going to be in the Exorcist
Yeah.
sequel that Blumhouse is doing, and I'm like, I sign me up, whether to work
Yeah.
on it or just watch it. I'm in. I'll buy
Hmm.
my ticket now.
Yeah. Yeah. Same. I mean, and to hear your passion that through all of this you are still, like you said, a fan at heart too.
I mean, if you're not, why are you doing this? Like, I don't understand anybody. If you don't love what you're doing, go do something else. Like,
Yeah.
why would you even bother with this business? It's kind of a crazy business, and there's plenty of other things you can do. So, you know what? But again, I love it. I remember I met Mike Doherty, who
Hmm.
did Trick or Treat.
Oh
and
yeah.
his little Sam character is something he drew in college, and now it's part of Halloween lore.
Yeah.
I actually did a small thing. A company I was working for, Patrick Topoulos Designs, they rented out some werewolf heads for the film. I remember at the time thinking, can we dye the William head, from Underworld 2 like dark? And I'm like, I don't know. And they were used in the sequence with um Anna Paquin.
Oh, in Trick or Treat.
Uh-huh.
Oh
And then
wow.
I got to work with Anna years later on True Blood.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. And I love hearing that it went from one awesome project to the other, the werewolf is, because yeah,
Yeah, I mean,
Underworld,
they
I
didn't
love
have a
those
lot of
movies
money
too.
and it was a quick shot and stuff. Yeah. And so
Yeah.
sometimes that happens. It doesn't happen much, but for that instance, it did, and it worked out great.
Now, when so you went out on Dick's advice and kind of him kind of um, giving his blessing in a way, and
Mhm.
now when at what point in the 90s did you feel like, all right, I'm here? Like, what set was it? What early set where you were like, all right, this, I'm doing this thing now?
Huh. It was a rough road because I moved out here right after a strike and there was no work. No makeup effect shops were hiring.
Mhm.
And so I bussed tables. I worked on the Back to the Future ride at Universal Studios, which I thought, cool, Universal, this is where I would stare
Mhm.
longingly at the back lot and be like, I wish I was there, not in the theme park. And then, at some point I'm like, what? I mean, I'm going out of my mind here. I got to do something. So I went to a store named Cinema Secrets, and it was in Toluca Lake on Riverside Drive, and they were gearing up for their Halloween makeover. So it was a makeup store, and they sold
Mhm.
supplies. But then at Halloween, they would, people would come in and pay them to do their Halloween makeups. So I went in, which is my pathetic little portfolio, and there was a makeup artist there, Brad Look, who I'm still friends with, and just talking with him, he was like, "Okay, you know more than the average bear about this. We're going to give you a shot." And that was my first time doing makeup for Halloween again at Cinema Secrets. After Cinema Secrets, it just wasn't much work. And the first movie I was hired on was The Santa Claus with Tim Allen and
Oh
Mortal
yeah.
Kombat. That was actually the second film. The first film, actually, I take that back. Right, I think it was after Halloween. I did work for Mark Shostrom on a small film called Love Is a Gun, and it was really cool to work for Mark Shostrom because that's someone I had read about in the magazines,
Hmm.
and he actually gave me my first job for that in a Nine Inch Nails music video. But going to ADI, I had been working. You're working there. I'm trying to pay my bills and my rent and figure this stuff out and learn all these crazy new materials. And it really wasn't until the following Halloween. I remember this. Like I was talking to Mark, and I'm like, man, this is tough, man. I'm eating like spam and steakum and ramen. But
Yeah.
he goes, Mark, he goes, for 1 year now, you have been making your living as a special makeup effects artist. That's how you've been paying your bills. That's how you've been surviving. And I was like, it was really kind of a slap in the face where I'm like, he's right. Like I have been doing this. And
Hmm.
it really taught me to kind of change your view on things or kind of spin what you're looking at. Like I could look like, yeah, this sucks, I'm getting sick of eating ramen, but no, he was right. The thing I came out there to do, I had now been doing for a year.
Yeah.
So that was that was a big one. The first set I was really kind of sent there on my own was Tremors 2 Aftershocks. Tom and Alex just kind of sent me to set, and I'm like, all right,
Hmm.
I think I've been on some student films, and the great thing about working on student films in colleges, it's kind of the same. There's more people and more equipment when you're on a real film set as opposed to a student film, but still, like the terminology is the same, and kind of the vibe is the same. So, fortunately, I didn't screw up anything too bad when I was on set for Tremors 2.
Yeah. Oh man. I mean, and you've been on the set of so many of these, like I said. I mean, and I'd like to just hit on a couple highlights if we can. And
Sure.
uh, I mean, I could be here all night and we could do a whole conversation on any one of these, but I'd like to start with, if we can, and I know we're jumping over a lot of good
No,
stuff,
let's
but
go.
a small little trilogy of films shot in New Zealand that you worked on, called The Lord of the Rings, and
hmm
and what what was that experience like, getting to be a part of that? Peter Jackson, the just the most epic films ever.
That was one of those experiences. That was something where I think everybody wishes they get to be a part of something special. At the time, now to back up a little bit,
Okay.
1998 or 99, I was working for KNBFX and they were doing a Xena episode. And I had worn creature suits for movies. I played one of the aliens in Alien Resurrection. I got to chase Sigourney Weaver around. I was a baby Godzilla in Godzilla, and so they said, we have this destroyer thing, go down to New Zealand and fight Xena. And I'm like, all right. So I went down there. And it was a fantastic experience. I was in Auckland, New Zealand, and I had a couple of days off, and I knew about Weta. I had heard about these guys, but I'd never met them, and I was able to go and meet them very briefly on my day off. I took a little puddle jumper to Wellington or something. I don't even remember how I organized this before a smartphone, but I did. I got to meet Richard and Tanya. They were lovely. And then coming back to the States, I started working for Stan Winston on Austin Powers 2, The Spy Who Shagged Me. And then cut to, let me see if I get the timing right. Lord of the Rings was announced, and there was an article taken out in a magazine that Weta was looking for people to come work on it because they just needed people. They put out a call across the globe, and I reached out to Richard and we were on the phone, and come Christmas time, 1999, Stan always shut down for Christmas. He always gave the crew time off. And Richard said, we're in a bit of a bind. Could you come down here and help us, in the foam room to get these prosthetics out of this massive army? And I'm like, sure. So I checked with Stan. I got his blessing, but he did make me promise to come back because we were gearing up to do Jurassic Park 3 and AI, artificial intelligence. And it's a good thing he made me promise because I probably I'd be talking with a Kiwi accent right now if he didn't. So I went. I went down there, and to be, honest, I mean, embarrassingly, so I kind of have a little chip on my shoulder. I'm coming from Stan Winston's. They're like, let me show you, let's see what you guys are doing. I got quickly humbled when Richard took me through the studio and he showed me everything that they were doing, from the costumes to the armor to the weapons to the miniatures. They called them bigatures, to the prosthetics. I mean, it was. I literally was speechless. And the detail that was, I mean, stuff you wouldn't see on film, but it doesn't matter. I mean, he talks about it on the DVDs where, the button designs of the elves are one way and the orcs are another way. They're an evil spin of that because he talks about the history and the culture. And I was literally just blown away. And it was a massive honor even to be a small part of it. I was only there, a few weeks because I had to go back and work on, the Jurassic Park films. I was there for Y2K when the world was supposed to end. Remember that when I was like,
Yes.
planes were going to fall out of the sky and
Yep.
everything. And I mean, I'm like 27, 28, and I'm like single. I'm like, great, the world's going to end. Let me go to Ground Zero. And I was like, sign me up. And I remember New Year's Eve down there. Um, we were at a pub, and then it went off. We all ran out, and the pub was on this bank near a river, and I saw all these little lights along the bank, and it was people checking their cell phones. That yes, they were still working. But yeah, it was. I cannot overstate how special it is. Usually, when you work on a film, you're like, hope it doesn't suck. Like I met the original Uncle Owen from the first Star Wars at like one of those like signing cons, and I'm like, what was it like being part of pop culture history? Like, you changed cinema. Did you know what you were doing? He's like, what, are you kidding me? My agent called me and said, I got 3 days of work on the sci-fi thing. He's like, great, I'll do it. George didn't know. And I
Right.
was like, huh. And he's right. You really don't know when you're working on something how it's ultimately going to turn out, with the exception of Lord of the Rings. You knew
Hmm.
you were part of something special, even then. And when I got back to the States, everyone was asking what it was like, how they do it. And I said, you have no idea what you're going to see there. They are going to use bleeding edge technology and every cinema special effects trick since the dawn of film they're employing as well. I mean, they did forced perspective shots that were done in a film called Darby O'Gill and the Little People from the 50s. I mean, it was, I cannot articulate how special it was and how ingenious and resourceful the New Zealanders were, just the people from around the world working on this thing. I mean, they had real armorers, like blacksmiths making actual armor. I mean, it was really unbelievable. And it's something that I will always hold dear and be thankful that I had a small part to work on it.
And yeah, I mean, what what um what a landmark trilogy. I mean, I still
Yeah.
remember seeing them in the theaters when they came out. I still remember when the
Yeah.
first trailer came out announcing that over 3 years these movies were going to come out. I can still remember it, and the hype. It was just, yeah. I mean, people today just don't even know. And yeah, the Y2K. I remember that too. That's I
Yeah.
definitely, yeah. I remember all those scares and everything, and being like, what's going to happen? Is it really going to be the end? And yeah,
Well, if it was, New Zealand was the first place it was going to happen because I believe that was the first industrial country. Like there was some island that nobody lived on that was
yeah.
going to get the first light of Y2K, but it was going to happen. It was going to happen in New Zealand first. So all eyes were on New Zealand. I'm like, great, send me to ground
You'll
zero.
yeah you if it's yeah you'll know first.
I don't like to wait around like, hey, let's get this over with. So I'm like, whatever. I don't know if I do that now. I'm married with kids and I might be a little more safe, but at the time I'm like, woo. So
Oh, just unbelievable. Now working on that, what was it, the foam work that you were working on, or maybe
mhm.
you can explain a little bit about,
Sure.
for people that don't know exactly like what your job on that was.
So I'm saying things like foam in the foam room, right? So one of the jobs I fell into, and this happened on the Santa Claus, was a foam latex technician. And what foam latex
Okay.
is, it's a material, it's like a spongy rubber that is injected in molds and they're glued on actors' faces for prosthetics. You see Mission Impossible, you see people pulling
Hmm.
their faces off, but this material has been around since 1939, since The Wizard of Oz, The Hunchback of Notre Dame with Charles Lawton. I mean, it's The Creature from the Black Lagoon. Like it's still used today. There are newer materials, and each one has its place, but foam latex is still kind of the staple of the industry. And
Hmm.
it's kind of a weird process. It's kind of like baking and chemistry. You have to weigh these components, you put them in a mixer, you got to time it, and depending on what your times are, like how quickly your mixer is running, will dictate the properties of the end results. Like so, for a facial prosthetic, you want it pretty soft. For like shoes or gloves, you want them a little tougher because people are going to be grabbing things. You don't want them to tear. So for some reason, my ADD or autism spectrum, whatever, I gravitated to this process and I took to it very well, and I was able to kind of tame the beast, and I had a pretty good reputation for it. So they knew that in New Zealand, and that
Hmm.
was probably the department I would have been most comfortable in. Yes, I can sculpt. I am not a sculptor, and I'm nowhere near the level of sculptors. Or yes, I can paint. I am not a painter. I can make molds. I'm not a mold maker. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
But foam, I can do. I've made about every mistake there possibly is to do with that material. So there's nothing that's going to happen that's really going to, confuse me. There was a brilliant makeup artist who was already in the foam room there named Zonder Fortier, who I'm still friends with, and I still talk to him. He was running the foam, and I wanted to make sure it's like, dude, this is your world. And he's like, nah, dude, come on, let's figure this out together. So
Hmm.
that was very wonderful and welcoming too. And so yeah, it was. We would start at 7 in the morning, and we'd have all these molds of these orc heads, gloves, legs, chess pieces,
Yeah.
and it was just we didn't stop. I mean, you'd break for lunch, you'd have a little afternoon tea, and then you would work till 6 or 7 at night. Because then once all the molds are filled with this material, you got to put them in an oven and bake them for a few hours so the rubber vulcanizes and it becomes spongy. Um, and that's what we did for the few weeks I was there, is just trying to help because they needed the numbers were just massive
I
on the
imagine.
masks and gloves and stuff that they needed. So, that's what I really went down there to kind of help them and see if there's any ways I could provide some efficiencies based on my experience. And working together, we did get things done. We'd start at 6, and by the time I was leaving, we were getting molds in the oven by 3 or 4, and then we'd all go to other departments and like help them with like these masks got leaves in their hair. We got to clean them all up and prep these, and so it really helped the process. By getting us out of the foam room early so we could go help other departments. Because again, it was just, I mean, I cannot describe the entire country mobilized. So when you make an orc mask out of foam rubber,
Yeah.
you've got a head shape of an actor, and then you put this sock on it. It's like a balaclava, like it's a custom made sewn thing you put on and you run the rubber around it so it has reinforcement. Like the prison employed the prisoners to sew these socks so we would have reinforcement to put over the molds. When I mean the whole country mobilized for these films. It was unbelievable.
Man, that It does sound unbelievable, and just a once in a lifetime thing, like you
Yeah.
said. I mean, even in your career, like you said, you've never experienced something
No.
quite as magical as that. It sounds like.
Nope, nope, I have not yet. I've loved all the stuff I've worked on. Nothing of that scale and of that. I mean, I was a huge Lord of the Rings fan. I mean, I watched the
Mm-hmm.
cartoon when I was a kid, The
Mm-hmm.
Hobbit. Like,
Yeah.
I loved all that stuff. And when The Hobbit came around,
Mm-hmm.
they did call me to come back down. But at this time, I'm like, I'm married, I got kids, I got kind of stuff going on here. And I'm like, I can't, I had to turn them down. But it was nice to be asked.
Definitely. Yeah. Awesome to be invited back, and that speaks a lot
It
about
was.
your work and your time there
They're
too. Now,
just great people.
you mentioned also in telling that story about working on Godzilla and I forget what year Godzilla was. It was the late '90s.
98,
The
97,
night,
98. So,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, and Alien Resurrection. And
Hmm.
now, being the horror fan and the monster kid that you were, and growing up with those movies in the zeitgeist and pop culture in your life, when you're there working on them now, I mean,
Oh,
what?
I had to pinch myself. I had to pinch myself, literally. So when I was working at Amalgamated Dynamics, we had just wrapped a movie called Starship Troopers.
Oh
And
yeah.
that's one of those cases where it's like, wait, this is what? But they explain that, Jim Cameron borrowed a lot from the Robert Heinlein book to make Aliens, and Starship Troopers. And so I'm like, all right. But I didn't know. I mean, I'm just like, you're working on this thing, you're in Wyoming, and you're shooting. It was awesome. It was amazing. And it was with Paul Verhoeven. I'm like, the guy, RoboCop, like that guy, like, sign me up. So
Mm-hmm.
that was an awesome experience. But it didn't have like, I didn't know anything about it. I never read the books. It was awesome, but it didn't do anything for me until I got back to California, and they were starting Alien Resurrection at ADI, and I'm like, I can't. I'm like, I literally had to contain myself because I remember renting the first Alien movie and just be.
Mm-hmm.
I still will look at it, and I'm still blown away by that stuff. I just met Bob Keane, who is a makeup effects guy, most famously known for the Hellraiser films. When he was a kid, he worked on Alien, he worked on Star Wars. He's from England, and he's telling me these stories, and I'm just sitting there listening, like, tell me more. Um, it was awesome, and it was cool that I was about the same size as Tom Woodruff, who's a veteran suit performer. He played Pumpkinhead, he played the alien in Alien 3, he was the Gillman in Monster Squad. Like, he's OG creature suit guy. And I was about the same size, so I would, be an alien with him, and I would, run around on set and, make people scream and stuff. And there's a scene in the film where the aliens are in a jail cell and they like kill one and he bleeds and it makes a hole in the ground, and then these other two guys escape. So in some shots I'm the one being attacked, in other shots I'm attacking.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember this clear as day because we're in this enclosed very small cell and there's a hole in the floor and there's all this gack around it and it's getting rigged. And I'm sitting there, and it's just me and Tom, and I'm looking over at Tom. We're looking out of the neck. You can kind of barely see. And I just see Tom sitting there, and I'm looking at the hole, and I don't know what the special effects guy's doing, but all of a sudden I see a little flame pop up. And I'm like, huh. Now we're in a room the size of a big closet. Like, there's no way out. Like, we can't get out. And the fire like goes around the ring and it starts to get bigger and smoke starts to come. So I'm like, I'm a little concerned now. So I look over at Tom and he's just chilling. And I'm like, all right, if Tom isn't worried, I'm not going to be worried. Um, then all of a sudden the door opens, the effects guys come in, they fire extinguishers, they take us out. You guys okay? And I'm like, yeah, we're fine. And we get the heads off, and I look over at Tom. I'm like, hey man, thanks for that. Thanks for, like, I'm looking to you, and thanks for just staying chill. He's like, dude, I was napping. I had no idea what was going on. Oh, great. We could have burned alive to death. And I would have been like, all right, Tom's still not freaking out.
He was cool
So
as could be.
cool as can be. So yeah, that was a fun set to be in. And I got to meet Sigourney Weaver and spend some time with her. And she was just awesome. I've worked with her a few times since then, and I cannot say enough good things about her. She's so freaking cool.
That's amazing. And with Godzilla, I imagine it was probably a similar feeling.
That
Getting
was
to
that was special because my father used to take me to the movies and introduce me to, like, King Kong versus Godzilla. I saw Godzilla versus Megalon on
hmm
on the drive-in, and Godzilla was made by the same team that did Independence Day.
Hmm.
And what was happening was it was a busy time in town and they needed a ton of people to work on this. So they were inviting people to come work on it with very attractive rates. Like if, whatever your rate was, they were like, we'll double it. And people were like, we'll go work for you.
Yeah.
So, I went to Tom and Alec and said, Tom, I got an offer for this thing, guys. And I'm loyal to you guys. I'm like, well, what's your offer? And I told them, they're like, you think Patrick would hire us? Jokingly, of course. But that was where I met Patrick Tatopoulos and the murderer's row of talent he assembled for that film. I mean, it was the best of the best that were working on that movie. And I got to meet people I had only read about and, still be friends with them. And I was able to be one of the baby Godzillas, which was, another awesome experience. And seeing Patrick work, who's just an amazing designer. He's a production designer and a creature guy. And yeah, that was crazy. And, being on these amazing sets on the Sony lot, there's a scene and there's footage of it somewhere where I'm one of the babies and the way the baby suits were massive. They were like 125 pounds on your back. They had trained us for months, all the guys in the suits. And for this scene, one of our legs were in these stilts, and one of our legs was fixed to the set floor, and the other one was just so we could kind of take a step and kind of move and kind of thrash back and forth.
Hmm.
But the one leg that was in the set was the support. Well, I snapped mine. So there's a scene somewhere, there's footage of this where the babies are thrashing, and all of a sudden you see this baby just go bloop over the side, and Jean Reno, the professional, actually helped get me up so I didn't dislocate my knee. So that was a
Oh,
great story from that the professional saved my life on that one.
I love it. I love
Yeah,
it.
it was awesome.
You, oh man, and yeah, the stories from the set, I just love stuff like that. The professional helping you from
Oh,
further
yeah. From,
catastrophic injury.
yes. It's out there. I've seen the footage. I don't know
Mhm.
where it is, but it's out there. I haven't been able to find it since, but it's somewhere in the internet.
So you're geeking out just like we would working on these monster movies. Now, what about when you work on something with Sam Raimi, like Spider-Man and Spider-Man 2?
So Spider-Man, again, a huge fan of the comic book, huge fan of all the cartoons. And it's kind of like when I heard Sam Raimi, I was like, really? It's kind of like when I heard Peter
Hmm.
Jackson for Lord of the Rings, I thought this should be Sir Ridley Scott, in my opinion. I was wrong. I take that back. But in the moment, that's what I
Right.
thought. And the same thing with Spider-Man. I'm like, Evil Dead 2? Like, that's Sam Raimi?
Hmm.
Again, perfect guy for the job. That job was unique because it was one of the first times, if not the first time, a creature shop did a specialty costume. And the webs were foam latex, so that was part of my job was to make the dimensional webs out of these aluminum molds. And you made this under muscle suit, and I
Hmm.
remember one of those things where I was trying to close the mold, and it was a body form of Tobey Maguire. And we had he had this like mesh undersuit that zipped up the back. And because of the zipper, I couldn't get the mold closed. And I remember going to my boss, Alex, saying, Alec, do you need this zipper? Do you really need it? Because it's kind of designed like long johns where you kind of get the top in and you get the pants in, but you run it all at once. And he's like, no. And I'm like, great. So I cut the zipper off and I like super glued the whole thing shut, closed it, ran the mold. Well, found out later Tobey Maguire is a little claustrophobic, and this was very constricting for him. And I think it was their first suit fitting where it's like, okay, guys, this is not good. This is not good. Now it's like, don't worry, we got a zipper in the back. We can unzipper it and give you some air to breathe. Well, I had super glued that zipper shut, so uh, yeah, it was not a good day. I wasn't there for that, but boy, did I hear about it later. Yeah. So that
What?
that was that was really my. I didn't get to go to set on that Spider-Man,
Hmm.
but I did. That was one of the first films where when they saw some of the test footage of the CGI Spider-Man climbing, they were like, "Stuff's about to get real." Because I
Yeah.
started in this industry right when CGI was starting. The last film I saw in New York before I moved to California was Jurassic Park, and it was ILM, it was Stan
Hmm.
Winston, and I'm like, oh my God, so everyone knew I was leaving in a month. So all my family and friends went there. At the end of Jurassic Park, I stood up and said, I'm going to work on the sequel one day. I'm 22 years old. I've only worked on student films. I had a better chance being abducted by space aliens than working on any movie in Hollywood. But 6 years later, I got to work on Jurassic Park 3 and play a dinosaur. But going back, a lot of people are like, why are you going out to California? Like it's all going to be done in computers, which was somewhat of a concern. And I did see the evolution. I remember on Jumanji, there's a shot of the digital lion It's a tracking shot, and it's beautiful. It took a year to like do and render
Hmm.
because fur was very, very hard to do. And
Yeah,
then, less than 4 or 5 years later, you got Monsters Inc. and fur swinging around and stuff. So it's been kind of crazy, that evolution, and see that, the workflow completely change. Um, while I was there, a lot of work being taken away. But I also look at it, it's another tool. Now there's things we can do that we couldn't do before because of CGI. So I don't like to be like they took work from us. No, they changed everything, and how now we work very well together to really try to bring the best stuff to the audience. We try to do it like a magic trick. You don't know where the practical starts and the digital ends.
sure. And that's a great point that working together like that, and because you have come up in the industry, your time in the industry has, like you said, coincided exactly with the rise of CGI, and yet you've worked on so many of these
Yeah,
films with or without CGI, but you've been on the practical side, and so
yeah.
it hasn't killed practical, I
No.
guess, is
I don't think it ever will. I don't think AI will either. But again, what do I
yeah,
know? I mean, I'm just the monster guy. I mean, there is some concern about AI, and it is
yeah,
definitely the genie's out of the bottle, and it's already starting to be part of the workflow, but right now it is primarily used, at least at my end, is just to get over writer's block or get over a creative block. We'll never submit an AI generated artwork, but we will, if we're like having trouble with an idea, we'll look at some options and we'll see what inspires us and then kind of create an original thing from that. But other than that, that's at the moment, that's where it's at, but I don't know where this train is headed.
yeah, yeah.
I don't
I
think
don't
anybody
know if
does.
any of us do right now,
Yeah.
but it's just like everything, like you said with the CGI. Once the genie's out of the bottle, then it's like the progress just goes at light speed. It seems like, and but then we
Yeah.
look back now. Like in the '90s, we thought it was moving at light speed, but we look at the CGI now, and I mean, we thought, well, Jurassic Park was perfect. Like
It
somehow,
was. It still is.
so it still is, and that's an outlier because so many of the films in the '90s, you look back at the CGI and what we thought was great then doesn't hold up. A few
Doesn't hold
do,
up.
but
A lot
Jurassic
of that
Park
is,
now that
well, it's like anything else. That's because the artist behind it. And there was a
yeah,
singular artist involved in Jurassic Park, and his name was
that's
Steve
true.
Williams. He's got a credit, Spaz Williams. There's an amazing documentaries about him. Light and Magic is a documentary on Disney Plus. If anybody's a special effects person, a fan, it is one of the best documentaries I've seen, and it goes through and it talks about Jurassic Park. And then he has a documentary about him called Jurassic Punk. Steve Williams was an interesting guy, and it really was singularly him that
Mm-hmm.
changed the industry and proved that we could do this, because they were going to do it with stop motion, and Stan was going to do the live action, Phil Tippett was going to do the stop motion, and Steve was like, why don't we just do all the dinosaurs out of CGI? And everyone's like, we can't do that, blah blah, and he it was him. Is anytime you hear like, well, the CGI artists had this, no, it was him. He was there was no artists, it was him. And, it almost seems like he feels like kind of like Dr. Frankenstein. He kind of saw this coming and he's like, look at what it does now. But to your point about CGI, it is a tool. And like anything else, like you can have two people play a Beethoven piece on the piano. One kid plays classical piano, the other
Mm-hmm.
one's a virtuoso. It's the same piece, but it's going to sound very, very different. It's the same thing with CGI. And the way my lizard brain works, where I try to calm myself down, is I try to think of what has happened before. And in the beginning, for a while, the only way to tell stories was through plays, Shakespeare. I mean, we still read Shakespeare today. And then when movies came out, oh, that was going to be the end of plays. We don't have to have
Mm-hmm.
plays anymore. And then when TV came out, oh, that's the end of movies. We're not going to have good movies. And all of that proved not to be true. And I think the same thing is still true with this. I think AI is going to be a tool. I think it's going to be a novelty in the beginning. Like I've said this before, if they make like a Marilyn Monroe versus Bruce Lee movie, like I'll check it out just to kind of see.
Mm-hmm.
But unless it is something really good and it's impactful and emotional and can grab the audience, I don't know that it's going to really take off. It's
Yeah,
just going to be another tool,
right.
I think.
Yeah.
But what do I know?
I don't know. I think I
They make big rubber monsters for movies. What do I know? I don't sociology or anything. It just, you know.
Well, you've seen a lot of these trends come and go, and
I
what
have.
has stuck, and like you said, everything you mentioned, has proven to be that way. That it hasn't killed
Mhm.
what came before. It's just become um, helped it evolve, I guess. Um,
It has, and it does do things now that you were never able to do before.
yeah.
That's the really neat thing is that, now we can have puppeteers on set operating a monster and then CGI can just paint them out very, very easily. So you can do really crazy stuff now that you had to do with cuts and angles and shadows back in the day. So in that regard, it's great. And it also saves time. I mean, back in the day, if you did a bullet hit, like in The Godfather, when Michael kills
Hmm.
Sollozzo, it was a little squib, and then the appliance went over it, and they rigged it. It took hours to make, and they called action, and it went. And then when they called cut, they'd have to clean everybody up. He'd have to go back in the makeup trailer for hours while the
Hmm.
company would go shoot something else, and then they would do it again. Now, like on a show like True Blood, if there's a gunshot wound, we can start the scene with the appliance on the actor's head and then CGI paints it out until it's time to reveal it. That makes it for a much more efficient shooting day. It's just a better efficiency of time.
Hmm.
And some people too will decry, saying that, if an actor's in a prosthetic makeup for like 12 or 13 hours, it's going to start to look kind of gnarly because edges start to lift, movement and stuff. And CGI can help clean some stuff up. And some people say, well, that's not really utilizing makeup. And I said, well, what's the difference then? Back in the 70s, if that happened, the DP, the cinematographer, the cameraman, he would adjust a shadow to kind of hide an edge or hide a sin in
Hmm.
that way. So how is that different? I mean, one's analog and one's digital, but they're still doing the same thing at the end. So, I mean, that's my opinion. Some people will disagree with me, but that's what I think. And I don't want to make it sound like CGI is only used to like clean up our mess ups or make our lives. It's an amazing tool that, and I've been fortunate to work with some very brilliant CGI artists and collaborate with them on shows like Heroes, True Blood. I mean, it's been amazing.
Absolutely, and yeah, I think that's a great point. And another franchise that mix of practical and CGI and monsters that you worked on a couple of the Underworld movies.
I
I
did.
love all the Underworld movies. You worked on Evolution
I
and
did.
Awakening,
Yep. Yep.
and I think that was with Patrick too, if I'm not
It
mistaken.
is. Absolutely. And that was awesome. I didn't get to work on the first Underworld. That was, the first thing that him and Len and Kevin did, Kevin Grivo and Len Weissman. But then Underworld Evolution, that was a great experience because Steve Wang, who's a legend in my industry, was kind of heading a lot of stuff up there. And he's had an impact in this industry that is, like Rick Baker or Dick Smith artistically. I mean, it really was awesome to see how Steve did things and how he created things. And, again, working with Patrick's designs, because Patrick was, obviously the conductor over the whole thing. But the William Wolf, that I was like, this is where Wolf should be. And that was Brian Steele was in that, who's an amazing suit performer. And then the vampire Marcus, I think his name was, the vampire guy
Hmm.
with the wings and stuff. And that was really neat seeing how they did, because at the time I'm like, how's this going to work? Because it just showed this back with these things on it. I had to make these foam appliances, and it was when his wings were kind of folded up and then behind him, and then they would come out, later.
Yeah.
So again, it was just really neat to do. They didn't do it as a suit on him; they did it as appliances. So it sucks for the actor, but boy, did it look amazing, because a suit
Hmm.
kind of bulks you out. Appliances will keep you very sleek, kind of like Abe Sapien in the Hellboy films. That was appliances on Doug Jones,
Yeah.
and it kept him really sleek. The lichen designs, we got to run some lichen suits and out of foam rubber, but the William Wolf was the one that I was like, this is badass. This is like
Yeah.
from the Howling and American Werewolf are the pinnacles. Like
Yeah.
you're gonna judge every werewolf against those, and the William Wolf was right up there with both of them, in my opinion. It was awesome.
Yeah, I love those movies, and yeah, I love those effects and those creatures in there. Really awesome stuff. And you've mentioned True Blood a couple times already. You worked on quite a few episodes of that series, didn't you?
From season 3 to the end is when I
Okay,
was on True
wow,
Blood. Yeah.
awesome. So yeah, that's a lot of
It was
episodes.
a lot of episodes, and there
Yeah.
was a period of my life where every article of clothing I owned had a blood stain on it somewhere. I cannot. And when I first went to the first production meeting, I'm like, man, everyone looks really ragged. I couldn't figure it out. Well, it's a vampire show. A lot of the shooting happens at night. And then the
Hmm.
crew would have to like grab a couple hours sleep and then go to the meeting. So it was a gnarly schedule. I mean, I would keep my phone by my ear, like ready to ring if I wasn't there or something was going on. It's like, we've got an issue, and I would have to deal with it. But that was an awesome experience because and the experience it gave me there, it was like doing a movie every 3 weeks. So for
Hmm.
that show, I wasn't as much working on the floor running foam. I was more or less supervising and coordinating. And I would get the scripts, I would read the scripts, I'd do the breakdown, I'd have a meeting with Dan Rebert, who and Todd Masters, it was Todd Masters' shop, and we talk about how we're going to do these effects. We'd go to the meetings and we'd budget it, and then we would schedule it to take the stuff to set.
Hmm.
Um, Really clever things. I mean, I learned a lot about fangs and dental work because we did fang work on people, and every 3 years, I think we had to redo it because your teeth naturally shift. Even as
Hmm.
adults, they shift just a little bit. It's enough to change that fitting. I did get to play a couple of characters in a few episodes. I was the first actor to play Warlow. There's an end scene where Sookie's in the bathroom and there's like I don't know. It almost looks like the Predator, and he's like, "I'm coming for you. You're mine." Well, that was me in like a green screen elastic thing, shoving my face through it, trying to say these lines so the VFX guys could make this weird stuff. And then I was a dentist in Vamp Camp, where I'm pulling fangs out of vampires. And then later,
Yeah.
when the inmates from the asylum, they're pulling my teeth out. So it was a fun time. It was a great time, and I got to meet some really amazing actors and just again a great crew. And to do that quality on that schedule, it's pretty nuts because you're pretty crispy by the last episode because you've been pedal to the metal the whole time.
Oh, I bet. I bet. Yeah, it sounds like it. Um, and then I guess not too long after that show ended, Stranger Things starts up, and you've done some work on that too. That's another timely one. As we're recording this, the final season is about to drop on that.
Yeah,
And but you've had a hand on that, another landmark, iconic series.
like that goes back to what I said earlier about when you get something, you have no idea what
Hmm.
you're getting. And when I was there, this is when I just started at Spectral Motion. It was called the Untitled Duffer Brothers Project.
I was gonna say you were there
And
right in the beginning, right? Like the
season one,
first couple
before it even was called
episodes.
Stranger Things, before it was called Stranger Things. So we were involved in the practical Demigorgon for season one. And I read these scripts and I'm like, huh, this is pretty awesome. Like I'm like kind of digging this. And you make the Duffer Brothers, and they're children of the '90s, but they are fans of the '80s, and
Yeah.
their fandom is authentic and genuine, and it is translated when you watch the show. Again, it's one of those things you go out to Georgia, you shoot some scenes with the monster, you come back. I mean, it was a gnarly schedule, and it was really hard to send things out and back, and it was a bit of a juggling act. But when it dropped, I was in Rhode Island and I was visiting my cousin Kate, who worked at Hasbro, and she was giving me a tour of Hasbro. I'm like, cool. And all I kept hearing about people talking about Stranger Things, and I'm like, what? Because at this point I had never known what binge watching was. I didn't know what it was, but it was like the buzz about this. I'm like, this is bigger than Lord of the Rings. It seemed it was just on. It's what everyone was talking about because everyone had already watched it like the night before.
Hmm.
So that again, it was one of those things like, huh, like who knew? Like I had no idea it was going to be this cultural phenomenon. I mean,
Yeah.
again, you read it, it's great scripts. They were great guys, but it just grabbed that zeitgeist and just it
Hmm.
struck a nerve with everybody. So I mean, you're grateful to be able to work on something like that. But at the time, I'm just like stressing out how we're going to get the monster to Atlanta and film on this date when we're still sculpting it because the schedule is so tight. So that was part of the reason I didn't have much hair left, was for stress things like that. But yeah, it is what tail lights. You look back, it's like it's great to be a part of something like that, even if it's a small part.
I mean, so many of these projects we've talked about, you've gotten to help bring new life to some of your favorite classic monsters, and then here, like with the Demogorgon, it's
Yeah.
something that has now like basically become part of its own pop culture, and you've created this own, one of another creature that is part of this pantheon that goes on for today's monster kids that are going to be the next Duffer Brothers.
It's awesome, and I love to hear that. The first time that started happening was when people would come up to you about Starship Troopers and saying like that was the movie their dad took them to as little kids, and I'm like, really, Starship Troopers? Because it was panned, like it was. The critics were like, he failed. He's trying to do RoboCop again, and it didn't work. But I guess it found some life after video, and it's got a pretty big following now. I mean, I think it's a fun movie. I remember seeing it in the theater at the cast and crew screening, being like, yeah, it's fun, but I like it's not RoboCop, which is what I was hoping for. But it became its own thing, and it
Yeah.
was again a really cool experience. And I'm always happy to share any stories or things with fans because I remember what it meant to me to meet people that worked on the stuff that I was a fan of. And for me, it was never enough to be a fan. Being a fan was great, but I had to go on the inside. I had to know what made it tick. Even to this day, I have a hard time even sitting in an audience for a concert. I want to know what's going on backstage. I want to be there and seeing the
Mhm.
audience be part of what's bringing joy to other people. That's just something for me. I don't know where that comes from, but that was how I've always been. And yeah, I love doing podcasts and things like this. So, thank you for having me on. I mean, I think we could talk like 2 more hours.
Yeah, I mean, well, I could talk forever, but another one that I got to hit on just for a minute because you mentioned it
Yeah.
earlier, and talk about um, characters and projects that you know had no life at the time and have taken on new life since they came out. You mentioned Trick or Treat earlier, Michael Dougherty's
Uh-huh.
Trick or Treat, such a landmark
Uh-huh.
film, and how Sam now is everywhere. Like you said, he's part of Halloween. They have their own section in Spirit Halloween, and
Right.
obviously it's one of our favorites here at Halloween Daily News. Um, what did you do on that one? I mean, you mentioned
It was
bringing the
the
werewolf
werewolf head. It
into
was really that was it. It was
that
just the
was
werewolf
your
head for that sequence. And I think we made some appliances for Anna. It's been a few years. It wasn't much, and it was almost like oh my God, these guys need help. How can we help them really quick? Because there wasn't a lot of
it's like
time,
an
there wasn't a lot of
emergency.
money. It was one of those things. Yeah, it was like an emergency. And I had met Mike Dougherty because we were going to do the Krampus film, but then that wound up going to Weta in New Zealand, which wound up being a wonderful film. But again, how cool is it? This character he drew in college
Yeah.
is now out there. I mean, when I was a kid, one of the to this day, every Halloween season, I watch this again. It's an old TV show called Tales from the Dark Side.
Oh
It
yeah.
was from the early '80s, and one of the first episodes was with Bernard Hughes. It was called Trick or Treat, and it's about an old man that likes to scare kids on Halloween, and then Halloween comes and he gets his comeuppance. And that, even hearing that music, it just puts me in the Halloween mode. And to this day, I still like when it's coming to the season, I'll force my kids to sit down and we will watch it again because that again, low budget TV show. I know the makeup artist that worked on it. It was done on a shoestring budget and long hours and not a lot of pay. But again, it was so special and meant so much to me that again, 55 years old, I'll still watch it now.
Yeah. And another one I want to mention before we wrap up one of your more recent ones, another Halloween movie, and it's called The Curse of Bridge Hollow. And I don't know if it gets enough love out there. I rewatched it recently since we've been talking, and I remember when it came out, we covered it, and I've watched it a few times. But that movie is loaded with Halloween atmosphere just throughout almost every frame of it, which I love, because some Halloween movies they take place on Halloween and there's not enough actual Halloween sometimes, and so I call it Hallosphere. But yeah, that movie excels in the Hallosphere. I imagine that was probably a fun set to work on, and you worked on Stingy Jack, the onset
Yep.
practical Stingy Jack, right?
Yes, yes. So Stingy Jack and the Mummies. So that was originally entitled Boo, and the director Jeff Wadlow had wanted to work with Mike Elizalde, the owner of Spectrum Motion, for a few years. And we finally had an opportunity with this film. And when we got the script, we're like, I mean, there's so much stuff in this. Can we just like focus on a couple of things? Like, and we can really put our attention. And he said, I want you guys to do Stingy Jack and the Mummies. And it was literally like a family reunion because Tony Gardner's Alterian Studio did some work for it. The Henson's Creature Shop did some work for it. Todd Tucker's Legend Industry did some work for it. So when I would go, I remember I went to set and there was a mix up with the shipment. So I got there, but the stuff I was supposed to unpack wasn't. And I'm just kind of standing around. I told the Brewers, like, you're paying me anyway. Can I like help Tony with his thing? And they're like, sure. So I helped Tony Gardner and his buddy Andre with this spin ahead, this thing.
Hmm.
I think a clown, he gets hit and his head spins around. I just helped him build that because it was great to be Tony. I used to work for Tony and do stuff for him. So that was a great experience. And the just this iconic giant jack-o'-lantern creature.
Yeah,
That's just Halloween. And
pretty
what we
awesome.
did for that was we had a 7 foot tall stunt guy named Kyle Zapernick, who man, that guy, we put him through the ringer because he had this giant head on. We tried to keep it. It's all the servo motors going. And one of the things we did was we know he breathes fire. So we wanted to do something like on the interior and make it look like it was on fire. So there was interactive lighting because obviously we'll let the CGI guys handle the fire.
Yeah.
But when fire comes out, there's interactive light. And by having us do that practically, it really made the CGI guys' lives easier. And we could like adjust it, we could dim it, we can intensify it. And so again, it was all just a concerto of everyone working together to bring this character to life. And I sent you some clips.
Like you're looking at Kirsten right now, and then Mark will talk, and you'll be over here, and then back to Kirsten. And now you're gonna look at me.
Can we try a like squint, like mouth closed, eyes squinting, and then on the count of three, he opens wide, breathes fire.
Okay, let me dim him down a little bit.
Okay, yeah.
Okay.
So ready?
I just think, I mean, that's just Halloween to me, and I'm
Yeah.
hoping that like other like Trick or Treat or other things, it will start to gain life
Yeah.
as Halloween's go. Because my youngest daughter does not like to be scared at all. It's like she hates horror films, but she loved that movie, and I actually
Hmm.
she became a fan of Ray Charles because the song "Hit the Road Jack" is in it. So she knows about
Awesome.
Ray Charles because of that film. But yeah, that is a wonderful family Halloween film, and working with Kelly Rowland and Marlon Wayans. And Marlon was funny because I had worked with him previously on White Chicks, and
Oh
he
yeah.
had very fond memories of the artists and stuff on it. That was a gnarly show, but I didn't go to set for it, but I would send the prosthetics up for them to apply to Marlon and stuff. And again, there's another film that had life after video that
Yeah.
my niece was like, "You worked on White Chicks?" I'm like, "I did." She's like, "That was awesome." I'm like, "Was
Yeah.
it?" So,
Hmm.
people love these films, and I'm happy to bring that joy into other people's lives.
Well, and that's a great point that the film could very easily, like Trick or Treat, catch that audience and grow because so many of them do, and so many of the ones that we consider classics today, like Trick or Treat, didn't get a proper release, or if it did,
Yeah.
it didn't do well. But now, we love them,
It's
and they're bona fide classics. And I agree, though, it's a family comedy, but I mean, it holds up even just as a grown up. It's a fun, funny comedy, and it does have a lot of heart in it, but it
yeah.
has a lot of Halloween
Oh
soul in it
yeah.
too. It
Yes,
really
it
goes to the
does.
heart of Halloween, and again, because there are movies that have a Halloween scene, and then there are movies that take
Mhm.
place on Halloween, and then there are movies that really involve Halloween, and this one is one of those. So of course, I got a soft spot for it there as well. And like you mentioned, that creature is just an iconic, a
Oh yeah.
flaming pumpkin head creature. I mean, it doesn't get much more Halloween and horror than that. So it definitely
No,
checks the boxes.
and I have to tip my hat to the producers and especially the director Jeff Wadlow, who we've worked with since then. That he really wanted to make a Halloween family film. So, and I think he succeeded. Again, let's just hope that over time it'll get like The Thing, the
Yeah.
1982 The Thing. John Carpenter failed. It
Yep.
almost ended Carpenter's career because E.T. came out that year. But now how often do we talk about ET? But the thing is
Right.
always just say what a brilliant, it was ahead of its time.
Yeah.
It I don't think people were ready for it. So, um, yeah, there's always hope for films. I think video market and now streaming is given an opportunity for films, like you said, that may not, for whatever reason, catch on. It gives them a chance to have life after video.
Yes, and being on Netflix like Bridge Hollow is, and
Yeah.
people, new generations, like you said, every year will be looking for something to watch in October, and it'll turn up more and more, I have no doubt. And then people will discover it, and it'll become more annual viewing where people will rewatch it like we do Trick or Treat or Carpenter's Halloween every
Yeah.
October anyway. So yeah, I could totally see that happening. And it sounds like on that one, it was a reunion, like you said, working with a lot of
Oh.
people you'd worked with over the years. And again,
Mhm.
in my recent rewatch of it, once I knew we were going to be doing this conversation, I was, of course, especially looking for the practical effects. And I was reminded that, again, what a great marriage of the CGI, but with so much good practical in that film.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of really good
Oh,
practical
yeah.
stuff. And for us that love the Halloween animatronics and the decor and all
Uh-huh.
that, it's just all right there and so much fun.
It,
So yeah,
I mean,
hopefully
again,
that'll get a lot more love.
I hope so. And ironically, after we had wrapped the film, we were contacted by a company that does marketing to do marketing for the film. And what this company did is they built a pop-up Halloween store, and we made some things for it. And they had again, there were other people involved, other people in masks and stuff. And we hid, and then the people come in, and then something happens, and everything comes to life. So you have to look up, Cursor Bridge Hollow Halloween prank viral
I
marketing
will.
campaign, and it's on YouTube. And we made the giant spider, and I
Nice.
think that was all we did. So yeah, it was a, it's funny at Spectral Motion, the artists are phenomenal. And I'm like, guys, it's supposed to be a crappy Halloween spider. It is the nicest Halloween spider you would ever buy. I mean, it looks like it fits, but if you really look at it, like, that's a really nice giant spider they made for this. So
Right.
it wasn't crappy enough, but it
Yeah.
was funny because it did scare a lot of people.
That's awesome. Yeah, wasn't necessarily the generic Walmart version. That was
Oh God,
a
no.
high end. That was
That was the goal, though. That was the artistic ideal we were
yeah,
trying to hit, and the guys exceeded it like they always do. So
yeah. Awesome. Well,
awesome.
again, I mean, I know I could talk for hours about tons more projects, but to bring it back home for tonight, so to speak, back to Halloween. You've worked on some of these films that are Halloween classics and just people go to because they're creature classics, but it all started as a monster kid, loving these monster movies and getting into Halloween and wanting to portray these monsters in a way. So now when it rolls around, you've got a family and you've got some of
Yeah.
these creatures that are out in popular culture right now that you've been a part of. So now it rolls around. What does Halloween mean to you?
I take the night off. I usually go to bed early. If
Yeah,
my kids want a special Halloween costume, I'll do it for them. But it is, I feel that maybe when I retire, I'll do something, but I'm like, let everybody else have their fun. I do this year round. Like,
every day.
I don't want to do something that, is going to steal someone else's thunder or something. Like, I'll go and I'll say, like, Rick Baker will do something at his house, and I'll go to his Halloween thing, which is awesome
Yeah.
because, again, another monster kid, loves Halloween, does his thing there. Maybe when I'm retired, I'll do something like that as well, and to bring the joy. But for right now, I take Halloween off and I let everybody else have their fun.
Awesome. I hear you. Well, I think you earn one night off one
Thank
day
you.
off a year bringing Halloween fun to us all year. Halloween
I
creatures
love it.
and yeah, well, we love it and we're here for it.
Awesome.
Do you have any upcoming projects that we can look forward to that you want to plug?
Pants. Nothing I can talk about at the
Okay.
moment. I'm under
All
some
right.
serious non-disclosure agreements, but there is some stuff that is brewing right now, and we'll
Okay.
see. Hopefully, you'll be hearing more from me in the next year. So that means I have to come back. If you have me back at a future date, then I can talk about it. I can tell you what we're doing.
Oh, I think we're definitely going to have you back, and we'll talk about another
Thank you.
dozen or so of your films that we didn't get to tonight, or we'll dig deeper into some of these that we did talk about. But this has been awesome, man.
Let's do it. Thank you,
I,
Matt. This
I,
has been
I,
fun.
yeah, I can't thank you enough for just taking the time and giving us some insight. Like I said, just some of these films are just some of my own personal favorites and classics that I have great memories of seeing in the theater and revisit often myself. And so just to get these stories and to know that somebody like you who is us is there,
Yeah.
helping bring these things to life just makes it. I don't know. I'm like you. I always like the behind the scenes stuff. Like I love the
Yeah.
director commentaries and the
Oh,
the
me too.
the documentaries. I mean, I eat that stuff up, and I always have as long as I can remember. Like being a kid, like Fangoria, just loving the even Entertainment Weekly. Like give me those
Yep.
art of I devoured that stuff growing up. So I love hearing this that so many of these films is being created
Oh,
by people just like us are the
Yeah.
people we want there making these creatures.
Well, it was a great, the behind the scenes, seeing Rick Baker when he was a kid, this
Yeah.
young kid with long hair. Speaking of Fangoria, there is a Fangoria Kickstarter where they're making a compendium of all their magazines, of all their issues, and a whole thing. Check it out. I mean, they've already exceeded their goal, but like, yeah, I don't even know where all my Fangorias are, so now I get to get them all back in a bound edition. So if you're a Fangoria fan, check that out too.
Definitely, yeah, and that'll be a must own. If yeah,
Oh yeah, oh yeah, it's pretty
that's
awesome.
yeah. Oh man. Well, like I said, we will definitely have you back on. This has been fun.
Thank you.
And I know our audience appreciates it and is going to love it. And I never like to say goodbye, but every day is Halloween. So I'm just going to wrap up the only way I know how, by wishing you a very happy Halloween.
Thank you, Matt. Happy Halloween to you and yours as well. And happy Halloween to everybody listening to the podcast. I look forward to being back and talking more Halloween stuff.